clearest definition is in spirituality, we are encouraged to find out who we are and the world around us. Go find out through meditations, through inward to prayer, find out. In religion, they tell you who you are, what to do, what not to do, the dogmas, the rules, the traditions, the punishments, etc. It's very different. So in spirituality, you do it yourself hopefully with some spiritual guidance in one form or the other. Whilst a religion is totally man-made, or all religions are man-made, they may have a very wise book as a basis on which they base it, but the rules, the dogmas, the rituals, etc., are not spiritual. God doesn't want us to have traditions or rituals and so on. That's all our ego wants that, but not divinity does that not do. Because the moment we cling onto traditions, we are clinging to the past, which is contrary to evolution.
Welcome to a Broaderlenspodcast. Hans Wilhelm, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Boo. Delighted to be here on your show. It's very exciting.
Oh, no, it's an honor and privilege. You're an author, you're a spiritual teacher, and I like to say modern mystic and illustrator. You have a YouTube channel that brings profound teachings, knowledge, and you simplify them in a way where it's very easy to listen to and get that aha moment and let that truth sink into our hearts. So I truly appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, that is my endeavor. It gives me great joy. I do this video channel mainly for myself to understand how all the dots connect in the spiritual world. And whatever I find, I share. I do not see myself as a teacher. I'm just an illustrator and author, and I share my spiritual path with others. And those who like it, it's fine. Those who don't like it, it's also fine. I have no interest to convert anybody, convince anybody. I'm merely sharing these amazing discoveries which I have made thanks to the various wonderful teachers I've had in my life, and of course most recently through the work which comes with Gabriele, which I put into visual forms in illustrating it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's what my podcast is kind of about, just learning how to be ourselves, and it's okay to disagree or agree with, and just learn how to question things, and it's okay to be you, and I don't need to convert anybody. I don't need to, just let people think however they want to think and find their own truth. So I really appreciate that about you. So thank you. I would like for you to walk us into your early life and how you got to this whole journey.
Well, as we can hear, I grew up in Germany, and we were not a particularly religious family, but I discovered very soon, very early in my life as a teenager, that whatever the churches were teaching didn't really work for me. It didn't make sense. I knew God was love, and that is not what I heard in the churches. So I tried to find other ways, other information, but which was very difficult at the time. That was before the internet. But eventually I got connected to the transcendental meditation, which I did, and I was absolutely already amazed that suddenly I learned for the first time we actually can control our thoughts, because they were going like crazy in my head all the time, not the good ones and the bad ones, but suddenly through meditation, I got some power over my thinking pattern. And this really helped me tremendously. And later on, when I lived in other countries, I met wonderful teachers and got involved into many spiritual paths, many popular paths. I studied them for many years. I left them and so on. But it was only some kind of 30 years ago that I came across a very specific teaching which combines all the knowledge and information that I got from the different other paths in one path, in one kind of teachings. And it came through a woman in Germany. Her name is Gabriele. And you won't find her on the internet. She doesn't want any attention onto herself. She's merely the instrument through which this incredible teachings comes. The books are available in all languages. And what I like it so much as well is that there is nothing to join. There is no organization. There are no teachers. There is no priests. Nobody. It's just only the path between you and God. That's all. And if it works for you, great. If it's not, also okay. So all the information, or much of the information, many of the information that I share in my videos are coming from that source. Because for the first time, I was absolutely flabbergasted how simple everything is and how everything connects so easily. Gabi has this one word, it says, God is ingenious simplicity. It's our churches and religions which have made him so difficult to understand and to grasp. But the laws of the universe, which are basically love, are very simple. And when we understand the basic laws of the universe, everything makes sense very quickly. And that gave me so much more confidence at knowing that this was for me the right path, because I learned it, I applied as much as I could all the various suggestions, lessons, you may call them, in my own life. I saw the changes. It was not an intellectual trip. It was a trip which really made me change throughout my days, my thinking, my speaking, and my acting. Very slowly, I'm far from any major breakthrough, but whatever I have experienced proves to me that the teachings which I am at the moment following make sense for me and are working.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to start off with the big question that you teach as well. And I learned some of this with Paramahansa Yogananda early on when I had my own awakening, who was a great teacher of mine. Is the Bible the Word of God?
All right, you may be losing a lot of listeners. I think there's a lot of things which we could call come from pure source, from God in the Bible, like the Ten Commandments, definitely like the Sermon on the Mount, the Golden Rule. These are sort of the three major things which I think are very profound, very absolute to reality and to truth. And they can be found in the Bible, as well as many of the teachings of the prophets who were at the time, Isaiah and so on, who all had wonderful, deep information to share. But the Bible as such, anybody who wishes to explore how the Bible came about is not the Word of God. The Bible consists of many, many manuscripts. It was Jerome was asked by the Pope, I think it's the 300th century, to put all the various prophecy, all the various gospels that were around into one book and translate it into Latin. And he started that immense job, and he had got thousands of documents and so on. So far, we have found 800 documents from which the Bible was compiled. And he says, this is impossible. I can't do this because a lot of the Gospels are speaking the opposite, contradicting each other. And he says, if ever I'd finish this job, the people will call me a forger, a faker, because it's impossible to put all these controversial and different opinions and views and stories together. But the Pope insisted, and he did, and he created the Bible, the first Latin Bible, and he changed it on, as scholars say, on 3,500 spots, areas, where he changed the text and put it together as best as he could, because the original text, as I said, we have 800 so far, vary tremendously. So out of this compilation of various texts, translated and modified, came the Bible. I find it difficult to call it the Word of God because, particularly in the Old Testament, we have a very wrathful, moody, horrible God. Somebody who I wouldn't call God, who just always wants to kill people, rape women, and kill, etc. It's an awful kind of description of God we find in the First Testament and the Old Testament. So it was only after Christ came that image of God in the New Testament has slightly changed. But it's still not what I call the true God image, which is love. Because even in the New Testament, there are a lot of mistakes. For instance, the degrading of women, very much so. I mean, that women are second-class citizens, very clearly. And then also that we can come to God through faith alone, which is also total nonsense. And there are a lot of other teachings in the New Testament which are absolutely not how I understand the pure absolute reality works and the original teaching is. Now I understand that many people are very confused in the time like this, and there's nothing solid, nothing to hold on to. And they think and like to believe that the Bible is the last kind of component in their life they can really hold on to, because the last truth in life. But I'm afraid that the text has been changed so much. It was interesting when I went to Bible class for a while, a long time ago here in America. And as we were reading I think it was the King James Version, and I compared it with the German book, which I brought along, the German Bible, translated by. There were major mistakes in these two Bibles, the German one and the American. And so when I says, oh my God, this is crazy. This has a totally different meaning, the sentence, than it's translated here. So just by simple testing. And one of the typical things how the Bible has been changed afterwards is, of course, right recently, they changed in the new versions. It's no longer thou shalt not kill. It's called you shall not murder. There's enormous difference between the meaning of these two things. Because basically allows going out and kill and war and killing animals and so on. Because murder is the only thing which is bad. So the churches, the organization church has always changed the Bible from the beginning.
Yeah, thank you. I asked this question not to say, hey, you're wrong, or, put anyone down, but I asked this question to show that maybe no collective really owns the truth, but the truth is within all our hearts. And it goes back to that love and that intuition and that lies within us. And, there's a hip hop artist. I like to call him a hip hop mystic. His name's KRS-One. And he says, the word of God is in your heart. And it's in our hearts.
The kingdom of God is within. Yeah, it's always. That's also the teachings with Linus. And it's difficult to understand that the outside world is basically a mirage and everything is in. And we pray within. We don't pray to somebody up there. And going to church doesn't help much. It's the God within who is the one who responds to our prayer. You're right. I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. You also teach that Jesus taught about reincarnation.
Yes.
And I learned this from Yogananda when I had early on in my awakening. And he wrote a couple books called The Second Coming of Christ Within You. And he mentions that. And you're the second person I've heard talk about that. And I really love that about you.
Yeah, this is not new. I mean, Edgar Cayce very famously, of course, based this whole kind of teachings on that one. At the moment I understood reincarnation, that this is not only our life and why people are rich and why we are poor, why some go through suffering, some have an easy life. Suddenly everything made sense. But until that time, I couldn't understand, I couldn't believe in a loving God, because I saw my neighbor was suffering, that one had an easy life. It didn't make sense. It was totally unjust life that I saw around myself. But reincarnation put it all right into front of us. It says, we only sow, and Christ said it, you reap what you sow. So not necessarily in one lifetime, but in many lifetimes. And Christ did teach reincarnation. I mean, that is a fact, which wasn't also unusual either. Yeah, Christ was a Jew, Jesus was a Jew, and the Jews at the time, many of them knew about reincarnation. So it was nothing surprising, because his followers, his disciples asked him, he asked them, who do people say I am? And they come up with various speculations. And he even says that I think John the Baptist was Jeremiah before. So there are many quotes in the Bible as such of reincarnation. But the teaching of reincarnation was not taken out by the church. It was taken out by an emperor, Emperor Justinian, in the 6th century. He considered himself, he was the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire. And he considered himself as the ruler of the church as well. Normally the church rules the emperor, but he considered himself as being the ruler. And he wanted everybody to believe in the church, and you can only come to God through the church. So, and also there was some problem in what we call at the time called Palestine, some war situations. So he was very strict. He suddenly started to ban reincarnation. And he made it a law, I think 543 originally in Byzance, which is now Istanbul. But it wasn't accepted by the bishops at the time. But 10 years later, in 553, on, I think, December the 8th, it suddenly became law that the Catholic Church, or the Roman Church at the time, can no longer teach reincarnation. And they had to invent things like original sin and the birth out of by conception and all this kind of stuff, which is not in the Bible. And it was very difficult. Now, because you now go and ask for priests in the Catholic Church, for instance, and most others who have taken on this mistake, they can't really answer where were we before and where do we go after death. They've got some nebulous ideas, or we go to God and stuff like this, but they can't explain it because it was taken out. They were not allowed to teach it anymore. So I think this very profound knowledge of reincarnation, unfortunately, was taken out. 50% of the world population believes in reincarnation. But the Christian Church, and anybody who fell off it from the Christian Church, the Lutherans, Protestants, and so on, they all carried this mistake with them. But we know through many, many different channels, through hypnosis and Edgar Cayce and Dolores Cannon and many, many others, that reincarnation is not an assumption, it's not a speculation, it's not a theory, but it is a fact, because we all can go to previous lifetime. I do not recommend people going to past life transmissions, going back into their life, because there is a very strong reason why we are not supposed to know it. If we would remember all the horrific things we might have done in previous lifetimes, or which have happened to us, we would be so overburdened with negativity in us, hatred or pain or suffering, victimhood. So there is a strong reason why whenever we incarnate, there is a veil of forgetfulness, that most people of us forget our previous lifetimes. That can be assessed against through hypnosis, which I do not recommend, because the moment you open the lid of that can of the worms comes out, and they can really give havoc into your present lifetime. You may come into knowledge which is better kept hidden from you in this lifetime, because we all have so much to do in this lifetime to clear up our act, that the unnecessary knowledge of the past can be very detrimental for our development.
Yeah, a lot of the Old Testament comes from, the Bible stories come from other sources, like the Mesopotamia, the Sumerian, the Babylonian, the Akkadian, and even the Kemetic teachings that we call Egypt now. A lot of that stuff came from Egypt as well. And I think it's important to know that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of the story of Noah, of course, was in the Gilgamesh, long time before any Jewish people as such, or Hebrew people were actually called themselves Hebrew. Yeah, these are a lot of old stories recycled. And to call that the word of God is a bit problematic to me.
Yeah, thank you. Even the Kemetic teachings that we call the hieroglyphs, you can translate them to God's words, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, you think they are?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, the Greeks and the Romans conquered Egypt at one period, and they understood a lot of the stories and a lot of the wording and the meanings. So, later they come up with the word of God. I think that's pretty interesting. Maybe they might have adopted some stuff from there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Karma. We hear a lot about karma, and a lot of times I would see people put a quote saying karma's a B word. But if you are, what is karma? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, or more we can learn about karma.
Oh, it's just a kind of Indian word for something which Christ taught, sowing and reaping, the law of sowing and reaping. It is as simple as there was no secret. We don't have to study the Eastern philosophy, religion. We use the word karma because most people understand what it is. But Christ very clearly says, whatever you sow, you will have to reap unless it is forgiven. And this is the key. So in other words, and to explain it the way how I see it and how I show it in my very short videos, we are talking about vibration. All our existence, you and I and everything else, is nothing but energy, vibration, and fluctuations. There is no solidity to anything. It just appears solid, but nothing is. So the highest form of this vibration is love, unconditional, unlimited, selfless, and all-inclusive love. That is what you and I and everybody else is made of. All the planets, all the stars, we can call it light ether as well. We can also call it consciousness, or the quantum physics who call it the field, the quantum field. We are out of this incredible consciousness awareness, and we are that pure entity in our original form of being. Unfortunately, at the beginning of creation, some of these pure beings, spirit beings, decided to make their own creation and left the vibration of highest love. And that was the birth of the ego. They left it, and the moment they were no longer in favor of the unity of all, but in the self-interest, in the ego, they no longer could stay in the highest vibration because the entire universe works on the law of attraction. So they separated themselves from this higher vibration more and more and more. And by becoming more and more selfish, they removed themselves further away from this pure form of love. And the lowest form of this vibration is matter. And you and I, and we are now living in this field of matter. This is nothing but crystallization, light ether, or crystallization consciousness. This is where we are living in right now. And all this negativity, what these fallen angels, this is when the Bible speaks about the fall, have created for themselves as a group individually, we call karma. It is every time we think, act, or speak against the law of love, we are on a lower vibration, and we are creating something which is unloving. And to return back to love from where we came and to which we will all return eventually, we have to undo these soul shadows, we can call them, soul burdens or karma. We have to undo every time we have spoken, acted against the law of love, every time we have sown something which is not loving, so that we don't have to reap it. And that is done through expiation, either in the soul, in the spiritual realms, or here on earth. And that's why the earth is such an incredible planet, where we can do it through forgiveness, forgiving each other, making amends where we can, and no longer doing these mistakes. The earth is a very unique planet. It's a school. We are only here for, 30,000 days as an average, which is nothing. So therefore, this cannot be our home, because it's so very, very, very short. And the older they get, the more you realize how short it is. And so here we can have the opportunity, here also we have the opportunity to incarnate together with other souls with whom we have had most likely interaction in previous lifetimes. And we now see a father, uncle, or a neighbor whom we have hurt, or they have hurt us. And suddenly we can undo that negativity, undo that karma, that seed which has now, the sowing and reaping the result. So karma is not punishment. No, we did it to ourselves. Karma is a teaching tool. So in other words, if I hurt somebody and as a result I get sick or something like this, my illness teaches me not to longer hurt myself. For instance, I can hurt myself by smoking, and eventually I get lung cancer. So this is basically nothing else. It's a delayed reaction, cause and effect. So I understand every time I see something which is not loving, the cause must be an unloving source. And what have I done to it? Have I contributed to it? What can I do to undo it? And with the inner guidance and helps, and we can ask our inner guidance, we can ask Christ, God, to show us what we have to clear up here in case we are finding ourselves in a situation which is what we would call very negative, very destructive. And naturally, there are no coincidences in life. Everything is carefully orchestrated for ourselves. As Byron Katie says it so wonderfully, nothing happens to us. Everything happens for us. So even the most horrendous situation we find ourselves, which we have created ourselves at one time, is here for us to become free again from our karma, from all that what we have caused on negativity.
I love your answer. I got to rewatch this because it's so profound. Thank you.
You have seen my video. It's much easier for anybody who's interested to just go to my website or to YouTube on my channel and see that 7-minute video of how the law of karma works, how it affects us, how we, etc. And when you see it visually, it makes so much more sense than if I try to explain it here in words using still an English language I didn't grow up in.
Yeah, I'll definitely be posting that on when I upload your video. So thank you for that. Your links. You also have one, a beautiful one on the ego. What is the ego?
Well, the ego, as I mentioned earlier briefly, the moment the pure spirit being in the absolute realm after creation, when everything was perfect, decided to no longer wanted to live in unity with all that is, but wanted to make their own creation, they develop a self kind of versus unity, all. And the self glorification, the ego came out of this one. And the ego is basically by having separated ourselves from the all that is. And that has caused the fall, because every time we have acted against the law of love, we have basically acted on egoistic reasons, selfish reason. I want this for myself, not you, but I am important. And this removed us further away from the level of love. So we are now living all in our ego world. And our physical body is a typical sign of that one. And our ego is here to help us to keep us alive. It reminds us when we are hungry and when we need, etc., when there is danger. But unfortunately, over time, we have started to totally identify ourselves with our physical body. That's who we are. We feed it, we live for the comfort. Everything we do is for the comfort of and survival of our body. For most people, including myself still. It's not for the survival and for the benefit of the soul, which it should be. The soul is inside the body, but I think I'm my body, and people are afraid of dying because they lose their body. So the body and ego has become more or less synonymous in a way, because they are the result of each other.
Mm.
To really overcome the ego is to realize who we are. We are these glorious, magnificent love beings, and we are here for each other and not just for ourselves. So when becoming aware increasingly of our selfish thoughts, words, and actions, and think more and more for the unity and well-being of others.
Yeah, Wayne Dyer once said, "We must see ourselves with the soul, with the body, rather than a body with the soul."
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That was a shifting truth for me when I heard that, because I was already doing work. I was learning how to live on a spiritual basis, and something inside of me just went and changed me dramatically. You talked about taking responsibility for our life, um, and living more in love versus like hate and fear. Um, and that's what the 12 steps taught me. You know, the 12 steps are the same principles that are in every religion. I think every religion shares the same beautiful spiritual principles, and it all comes down to love. Behind all those principles, it's love.
Yeah, and surrender.
Yeah, and surrender. Yeah,
That is the
acceptance.
key. Surrender, acceptance. Yeah. And knowing that you are guided by loving energy, entities, whatever you wish to call it, they are there to help us. But there are also, of course, entities surrounding us, astral beings, who actually can mislead us and also do harm to us. That kind of realm also exists. There's no question about it. We do have lots of earthbound spirits surrounding us here, and they can do some harm because they need our energy and they can influence us. So it's not all divine influence that we are exposed to. There's also negative influence, and we have to decide whom to follow. When we speak about addictions, that is definitely not a desire which comes from divinity. That can easily come from spiritual entities which use us to have their satisfaction or their vices fulfilled through our body. I have made a video about this, spirit possession, and that explains it very clearly how easily we can fall for that and thinking we're doing it for ourselves or someone else, but it is actually all influence of negative entities. I don't want to scare anybody, but the negative entities are very strong. We just see it right now in the political arena around the world, where the negative energies are influencing large groups of people, creating enormous amount of negative energy. And that negative energy is Lush energy. That is the energy of all these astral beings are living off. and they need it for survival. So all these wars which we are having have all a historical origin and other reasons, religious reasons, but they are usually encouraged and motivated by astral beings who really benefit tremendously from such wars, like the weapon industry also benefits tremendously from it, yes.
Interesting that you say that, because I did an episode with Kate Montana recently, and she talks about the same thing. These interdimensional beings, I think the Gnostics called them the archons.
They're all brothers and sisters. They just have fallen further away than we have fallen, to a degree that they cannot survive anymore without the energy. And they basically suck us for the energy for survival. So these are just brothers and sisters who have fallen further away than we have already fallen away. So it's not some kind of space and aliens or whatever it is. These are brothers and sisters. We are all brothers and sisters in the absolute reality.
So if we're in fear, anger, hatred, and a lower vibration, is it easier to get sucked into those energies or be influenced by them?
If this is all, it's by the law of attraction. If I have something like this in myself, yes, that's how they jump in. If I'm hate in me, envy in me, things like this is immediately one of these entities can easily attach themselves to myself and stimulate my envy, my hatred, my unhappiness. Yes, we have to watch that out. Therefore, it is so important every day to cleanse ourselves as much as we can of these negative emotions, the contracting emotions versus the expanding, the love emotions. And we know which they are. When we are not happy, when we are not content, when we are not at peace. So it is here in the school of life, which we are going through here on planet Earth. Every day we are faced in very specific challenges, small challenges, big challenges, which we have once sown into the universe, into the cosmic computer. They are coming back to us because all our karma, which I explain if you see my video, is stored in the planets. And when the planets move and come into certain constellation and download the material back to us, that is when we are suddenly hit with something that we might have done 500 years ago. Totally unexpected. So we are suddenly having this little impulse. For instance, somebody cuts us off in the traffic and we are absolutely furious. We want to race after them and kick them out, whatever. Suddenly all these emotions come up again from something which happened maybe 500 years ago. Just watch ourselves, watch our reaction to anything, watch our reaction. What is it? Is it love? Is it peaceful? Does it help? And whatever it is, undo it and hopefully not make it worse or going into the negative emotions any further. And the question answer is always love, love, love. It's always the answer to everything. It sounds so cliche. I'm fully aware of that. But love is the only thing to do. And in every situation, whether you take the wars, whether you take individual wars, we have got fighting, whether you have the way we treat our bodies, our family members, our colleagues, it's only way to do that. And the more love we are able to generate and work with love, the higher our vibration becomes, the healthier we feel, the better we feel with ourselves. It's, you see, as I said earlier, it is ingenious simplicity. It is all very simple. Nobody has to study God and read many, many books or go to seminar and so on. If that would be the case, then only the intelligent people would eventually be close to God. But it is other people who have got the heart, may not have always the brain or the intellect or the schooling, the one with the heart who help each other, etc. They are the one. The last one will be the first ones. So God cannot be studied. God can be only experienced. But it helps to understand the dynamic of certain laws of the universe, as I said, the karmic laws, the law of sowing and reaping, and so that back to, and when we see it, how it works, it is, yes, of course, it makes total sense.
You talked about in one of your videos about aliens, which is a pretty famous topic these days, whether you're a doubter or not. Are those real? Alien, other beings?
Well, if we look into the universe, into the material universe, and we see the hundreds of billions or trillions of galaxies with all the stars and so on, them not being inhabited by other beings is a bit strange. That Earth should be the only one. That's the one logical reason that I think. And then, of course, we do have also the semi-material universe and the totally spiritual material universes. So much bigger. The material universe is the smallest of them all. It's tiny compared to the rest. So yes, all the regions outside of the absolute reality mentioned earlier, when many spirit beings fell, there are 7 layers of spiritual vibration. We are at the lowest one here in the material universe, but there are 7 layers, and they're above us, which means beings of slightly higher or even much higher kind of vibration are occupying these areas. That's why they have got these incredible space gliders and can do all kinds of things, because they are living on a higher ethic than we do. They are living on more unity, on peace. And once you do that, the knowledge, the awareness becomes much wider as well. So they can have access to knowledge and information we can't even grasp, even with our artificial intelligence. So they can create and travel in ways we cannot even imagine or can dream of, only read in scientific literature. Because they are so much higher level. They would never harm any creatures. They would never pollute their planet. They would respect the elders. They would live in harmony. They live simplicity. They are communicating through telepathy. They cannot lie to each other. So all these are the higher beings in the Earth's truth. Now, these kind of entities, these aliens, will not threaten us. Because why should they threaten us? On the contrary, many of the higher vibrations are working on lower vibration to help their brothers and sisters to also return back to the source. So there's a lot of teaching going on. But they have a problem coming here to this planet Earth because we are so polluted. The aura of our planet Earth is so dark from our pollution, from our wars, from our hatred, from whatever we do to each other, that you better stay away from that. I mean, they are sort of not great, but it says this is not good. Doesn't mean that many have already been here, and there are entities among us here who have never incarnated before, who are here not because of karmic reason, but truly for teaching reason, and they are among us. And yes, I also know that there are also bad, so-called bad aliens who want to destroy us, but they are already here, as I said earlier. These are the astral beings, the earthbound souls who walk around us. Anybody does this, watch the movie The Sixth Sense, although that doesn't speak about a negative earthbound person. But yes, earthbound souls are real and they can influence us. And they're the ones we should be far more worried or concerned about, that they don't hook themselves onto us than any aliens flying around there. So most of the aliens who have been watching us and so on, I would call are positive aliens. But because of our low vibrations, they have stayed away for the most part. I am not an expert on aliens. There are many people like Bashar and others who can tell you far more about this subject, but I just see it from the spiritual aspect. If they are aliens or very high technology, they are also of higher evolution as well than we are.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. Another question I would love to ask you is, you talked about war, this negative vibration, this negative energy, just stay away from it. Well, how do we transcend war, hatred, and racism that's pretty strong in today's world?
As I said earlier, there's only one rule: with love, nothing else. Now, this sounds, again, very simplistic, with love, but I want to give you 3 examples where this has happened. We just had here in the situation where something horrible happened in October in Israel, and Israel retaliated with enormous energy. The same like we did with 9/11. America did an enormous destruction in other countries. Whether this are right or wrong, it's not my point to discuss, because people have got such emotional attachment to either side. I just want to remove us away from a moment that says, how have other leaders acted in such situations? And we've got 3 or maybe 4 classic examples. Because Einstein said you cannot solve a problem on the same level you created it. So you cannot go and, if somebody shoots rockets at you, shooting rockets back at them is no solving. It doesn't solve the problem. That's why the Middle East problem goes on for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. It's always tit for tat, tit for tat. They couldn't solve it because they're always floating back on the same level. But there was a person who set his whole nation free from extreme colonialism without shooting anybody, and that was Gandhi. He used the law of love, very simply. The same happened with Martin Luther King. He actually said to the white people, you can burn our houses, you can kill our children, but we will not stop loving you. This is Martin Luther King's words. He set his race basically free by not going into war, but purely through love. And the third example is Mandela. When Mandela became Prime Minister, President in South Africa, there was a lot of fear that the black people would retaliate against the white people. People expected a major bloodbath because there was so much hatred from the black side towards the white and black as well. There was so much atrocities happened during the apartheid regime that I thought suddenly with a black president it will explode. But he took an old African tradition, the Truth and Reconciliation tribunes, he called them, where the perpetrator and the victim had to sit together on the stage in front of the whole village, and they had to look into each other's eyes and forgive each other. That is mastery. That is leadership. And so the bloodbath, which everybody expected would happen in South Africa, never took place. Again, it was done through love. And I have another example here. Very recently, it was 2008, when you may remember when some Pakistani terrorists, you can call them, came to India in Mumbai and blew up or put fire to a luxury hotel and killed over 100 people there. That was a major incident there. And Prime Minister Singh at the time did not retaliate. He could easily go to Pakistan and start a war. But he refrained from it, and he said no. And he did sort of rather through spy work and so on to find out the group, but he did not retaliate like we have now here in the Middle East, because there's an old saying in Kung Fu. Lao Tzu said that it says, if you go on the path of revenge, you better dig 2 graves, one for your enemy and one for yourself. It just has never worked. But there are these leaders who have given us examples that you can actually turn everything around through the power of love, forgiveness, and making amends, and not hitting back on the same level. But unfortunately, too few people are truly statesmen. Most people are politicians, and that's a big difference between a statesman and a politician. So there we are. I mean, there are solutions how we can do that and how it can be done. Not always hitting back, and not always, but as Martin Luther King says, you can burn our houses, you can kill our children, but we will not stop loving you. That is the answer to everything. And statesmen in the past have shown us that it can be done. The solution is in us.
I started getting teary-eyed when you mentioned Martin Luther King. I appreciate it. I always say, if you want to know how it would look if Jesus was running for president, or Martin Luther King, or a great leader like that, look at Marianne Williamson. She wrote a book called The Politics of Love, and she's really tapped into her heart. And I love going back to your Einstein quote, which Marianne touches on, and she says, a lack of love is the level of the problem, and a lack of love is the level of the solution. So it goes back to love. It goes back to love.
Always, 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 always. And you have to be strong to use love. We always think it's something for the weak people. They just love and sort of la, 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 hippie style. But you have to be very strong to use love and to feel confident to yourself. And this is what Gandhi, this is Mandela, this is Martin Luther King and Singh did. They felt strong in their way, in their conviction. This is the only way to do. And they succeeded.
Gandhi once said, in heaven, there is no religion, thank God. So my next question, since you mentioned Gandhi, what is heaven?
Oh, what is heaven? In my understanding, it is, as I said, it's a vibration. It is the absolute reality. It is creation. It is full of planets, and planets are populated with mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, nature spirit kingdom, and spirit beings. And there are countless ones. It's continuously expanding evolution, and it's constantly evolving. And we are part of this. We have been part of this originally. And there is no shadow. There is no black and white. There is no time. There is no time and space. There is no karma in there. That does not exist. These are only concepts which were created through the fall. But the living is in harmony, peaceful for each other, not just for myself. And I'm told it was very beautiful. I've forgotten it, but I strongly believe in that kind of realm. And I believe that is our true essence. And this is also our true home. And we will all return to that in time, because I see it all evolving. With this planet Earth is now evolving. We are going to a rough time where a lot of negativity may fall off, so that the planet Earth comes into a higher vibration. Many, many teachers have said that. It's nothing new. The reason is because our planet comes closer to the central sun when everything gets intensified. So we are going through this time. For what reason? For the reason is evolution, progressing, but the good thing is here, and this is a lot of people speak that we are evolving beings. Many spiritual paths teach that here I am, totally like from the Neanderthaler and very sort of primitive, from the monkey maybe. And so slowly I have to gradually become a more better person, a more loving person. That is not my understanding. My understanding is we have been this absolute perfect loving being. That is our true nature. And we fell to selfishness. So all we have to do is to remember who we are, not to become anything new. Remember who we are and become that what we remember, and try that out again and see how it brings us forward. It's very different, because we don't have to learn anything new. All we have to do is to remember who we are. Children of God, divine being, eternal being, forever living, and just an expression of love.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because a lot of times you hear people say, and it's pretty conditioned into our minds, we're not perfect. And you hear, I'm not perfect. But when you meditate and you find out who your true essence is, that's perfection. We are perfect. It's just the mind creates this conditioned mind that we're not perfect. So I appreciate you saying that, because that's what I've gotten through meditation and just learning how to live on a spiritual basis and going within, is there's perfection in here, because we're made in the image of God, and I appreciate that, you saying that. So thank you. Another question I wanted to ask you about, heaven, is the life review. I've been interviewing a couple people with NDE experiences, and they talk about a life review. And I know you have done a short video on that as well. So what's your understanding of a life review?
It's another tool, a loving tool given to us to recognize our progress of our journey back home. So life review is basically when we die. Many people have it before the death, others have it after the physical death, where we will be facing our past life in a movie type of style, where we basically see the smallest, minute kind of incidents, and not necessarily from our own perspective, but how it has impacted the other person, the pain, the suffering I have given other people. And I feel them, definitely, strongly, because it should register and should be, stored in our soul. So let me give an example. If I, for instance, have hurt somebody and I totally forgot about it, well, I said something very loosely, I thought it was very clever, but the other person was crushed. I never noticed this in my lifetime. Now in my life review, I suddenly see the other person from a different perspective of how my careless words have hurt that person and how it crushed the person. And that crushing of that soul of the person, I feel in my own soul now. For the reason so it gets stored there, so that in my next lifetime, I will remember it whenever I'm tempted to be sort of rather flippant about somebody, say something. This will come up as a memory. It will give me an emotion. Don't do it. Don't do it. So all the negativity, the emotions that we feel during our life reviews are actually our assets and tools for our next life in some way. But we just see of how wonderful we were or not wonderful we were during that lifetime, and whether we have achieved what we set off to do. and our impact. And I think it's just a wonder. And we are not doing it on our own. We are usually in the presence of either our guardian spirit or there are other guardian spirits. And they are totally loving. They are not judging us. Nobody is judging us. The only person who is judging us is ourselves. We are crushed when we see it. We are devastated when we see it. The spirit beings around us have seen it a million times. They are very familiar about this experience. And they say, don't worry, you will continue. We all make mistakes. So life on earth here is allows mistakes. That's why it's a school. Nobody is asked to work every time perfection, perfection, perfection. We make mistakes and we learn through mistakes. And many of the mistakes we take over into the next life because we do not make up for them in this lifetime. But eventually we will have to in one way or the other. So it's not to really run ourselves down and think how bad we are. It's just to self-recognition. Our whole life here on earth is already self-recognition if we are awake. Anytime I feel, whenever something, as I mentioned earlier, somebody cuts me off in traffic and I feel this emotion in me, that is my moment for self-recognition. Why am I so upset? My wife next door to me says she's actually calm. She doesn't bother if somebody cuts you off. Says, well, that was a bit dangerous. But anyway, why am I upset? What's going on in me? So that is the important thing to realize, why I have this strong emotional reaction to anything throughout the day. So that is the moment of self-recognition. And that's why we are here of self-recognition. And the essence of the real major self-recognition happens actually at our life review, when we really look back our whole life and see how we have done, what poorly or great we have done.
Yeah, thank you. I love how you said a loving review in the very beginning.
It is a loving review. Everything in life is here to help us. Everything, as Byron Katie said, is medicine. Everything is on our side. There is nothing really against ourselves. Even our enemy who is hitting us, killing us, destroys our family, is doing something for us to wake up. At that moment, we will not see it and not understand it. But there are no coincidences why we are suddenly hit with these awful things in our life, so that we may become free of something, of our attachment to our wealth, to our job, to our prestige, of who we are. Everything is here to help us and to move us forward back to the source, back to love.
You know, there's that comedic story, the teachings of the weighing of the heart. And I like to look at that as a life review, a loving life review, though, for me personally. And, I'm writing a book. I was telling you about the 12 steps. And in my 4th step area, I'm talking about taking a life review because it's about a moral inventory of ourselves, whether it's good or bad. And what I learned in doing that and really practicing that step is, there's a saying, don't judge me until you're walking in my shoes. And when I started to do that, I started to have a deeper understanding. And like the Buddhists always say, understanding is another name for love, where I started to have compassion for people, trying to understand what they may have went through, their experiences, their traumas, their hurt, their pain, and their wrong perception, because I seen it in me for myself and how that created suffering for me. So that broadened my heart and it helped me to look through the lens of the heart versus the egoic conditioned mind, and that helped me. So
yeah, that's the whole purpose of self-recognition. Yeah, to realize what we are and what we are doing to other people. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah.
see, this is one of the greatest joys for me of putting up a podcast. Is for one is to help others if they can get something out of it, but it also just being able to talk to some beautiful human beings like yourself. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I really mean that. No, I really mean that.
And I love to accept the invitation I'm getting now because I'm meeting all these wonderful people around the world and to share that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, you can't go to Barnes and Noble and just have these conversations or anywhere else in public. They think you're weird. So I appreciate it for the most part. What's your, I usually ask people, what's for you, what does it mean, the difference between spirituality and religion? Or is it the same thing?
Oh, no. Well, the best, clearest definition is in spirituality, we are encouraged to find out who we are and the world around us. Go find out through meditation, through inward to prayer, find out. In religion, they tell you who you are, what to do, what not to do. the dogmas, the rules, the traditions, the punishments, etc. It's very different. So in spirituality, you do it yourself hopefully with some spiritual guidance in one form or the other. Whilst a religion is totally man-made, or all religions are man-made, they may have a very wise book as a basis on which they base it, but the rules, the dogmas, the rituals, etc., are not spiritual. God doesn't want us to have traditions or rituals and so on. That's all our ego wants that, but not divinity does that, not do. Because the moment we cling onto traditions, we are clinging to the past, which is contrary to evolution. We are evolving all the stuff which happened maybe 2,000 years ago. To repeat it over and over and over again is getting stuck. We are here to live in the moment right now, and God will tell us right now, if we have got the connection cleaned up, what to do right now. We don't need to dance or hierarchy or candle and memory and etc. So rituals, I've got a whole video on the rituals and traditions and hierarchies and how harmful they can be. Because people think, oh, that's lovely, that's good. And I'm not saying don't do it. If that works for you, good. But question it and says, why are we doing it? The moment we do any of these things, we are holding back to the past, something which happened in the past, which was worthwhile for the people then. But for instance, we reenact some kind of traditions of past for people in the past, but that was to honor them. But the best way to honor all our ancestors, whatever ancestors they are, from every race or country or religion, the best way is to become the best and purest being you ever can be. That's the way to honor your grandparents, not by reenacting their hardships, their problems, etc., etc. That is being stuck and putting things, a value on an outer things. But it's the inner thing. If you want to honor your ancestors, become the best person you can be.
Thank you for saying that, because sometimes in the 12-step rooms, you may hear the word rituals and the word spiritual, and going around the room saying I'm an alcoholic over and over is dangerous for me. So I had to let go of that because words have power, and I'm reminding of myself as someone who I'm not. It's kind of like that shadow self that I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink. I that's not my true essence. And I don't want to claim that because that has power.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, makes total sense to me. Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah, in the spiritual path, the way up is Christ speaks over and again. Do not emphasize your illness. Say, I am healthy. I am healthy. Not, I'm sick and I've got this and that. The moment you speak about it, your cells listen to the body and etc. You just perpetuate the illness. Say, I'm healthy. Believe I'm healthy, even if it's not at the moment quite there yet. But your cells will believe that too after a while, and they will have the energy to become healthier. So affirming the positive is highly, highly important. And what you just said, we are basically affirming the negative if you're continuously saying I'm an alcoholic. So that is, I think, a very important point.
Do you have any last words? I know we're coming to an end. Any last words you would like to talk about or bring up that you didn't bring up, or your message to the world?
My message to the world, I don't really have a message even my videos are not messages. They are just only my own explorations. And if I share them, and people work, it's fine. Now, it's something which I always find for myself very, very helpful if I get also sort of get lost in negativity, negative thoughts, judgment, you name it, whatever it is. The fastest way out for me is gratefulness, 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 gratefulness. What can I be grateful for right now? Sitting here, having a conversation with you, etc. All the abundance I have around here, in my body, my cells, etc. The moment I put myself into the vibration of gratefulness, all the negativity fades away very, very, very quickly, because I really act from a much different and much stronger and more powerful level. So I think anybody who feels a bit low or whatever it is, look around for what can you be grateful for. I mean, even Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf, thanked her blindness and deafness because she said, without them, I wouldn't have found God. So in everything is something we can be grateful for. So I would say, if there's a difficult time, quickly remember 5 things around you for which you can be grateful for, and see how it changes. I made a video on gratefulness, and where I explained the chemical reaction in the body, which happens when we suddenly attune ourselves to gratefulness or thankfulness, and how quickly it changes our whole, and we get basically a protective armor around ourselves, which protects us from more negativity. So that thought may be helpful now when we see all the negativities in the newscasts and so on, something to just thank you, God, for what I have right here, and show me how I can share the blessings with others.